Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. For those of you who are here for the first time, my show is about celebrating artists and their body of worth. And I am so excited about tonight's guest, Anne Morrison. When I first came to New York in 1979, shortly after I got here, there was a huge buzz about a show that was coming to Broadway called Merrily We Roll Along. Perhaps you've heard of it. But our guest tonight landed the show, but before that, a lot had happened, and a lot has happened since then. And tonight, we are going to celebrate Anne Morrison's body of worth. Before I bring her on, I'd like to give you just a little sampling of her amazing talents. Ladies and gentlemen, Anne Morrison.
R-S-V-P-P-O-Ds, pollinate the breeze. Make the queen of bees hot as brandy. Push up, azalea. Don't be a failure. Come up and see the hoot we're giving. Come up and see the grounds for living. Come poke your head out. Open up and spread out. For love me he may even die for me, sweep every cloud from the sky for me. He may be king, but he'll never be you. What did he like that I'm not like? What was the charm that I've run dry of? What would I give if my old know-how still knew how? What did I have I don't have? No. Whether the wedding is on or off, a person can develop a cough. You can feed her all day with a vitamin A and a bromo fizz, but the medicine never gets anywhere near where the trouble is. If she's getting the kind of a name for herself and the name ain't his, a person can develop a cough. You can tell my papa that's all right, 'cause he comes in here every night. But don't tell mama what you saw. Admitting from cradle to tomb, isn't that long a stay? Life is a cabaret, old chum, only a cabaret, old chum, and I love a cabaret. Listen, big boy, now that I got you made, goodness, but I'm afraid something's gonna happen to you. Listen, big boy, you got me hooked on how I would die if I would lose you now. Button up your overcoat when the wind is free. Take good care of yourself, you belong to me. Eat an apple every day, get to bed by 3. Take good care of yourself, you belong to me.
Good news! Anne Morrison is here. Hello, Anne.
Well, who is that cute little girl? Whatever happened to her?
Oh my God, she's an even cuter,
Old
older lady, but
Oh,
we're both a little older, so
no, I know. And hopefully a little wiser.
and a little wiser too.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, before we delve into this amazing career that you have and that you're continuing to have, I want to ask, how are you doing really in the midst of COVID? We are still in the midst of a pandemic.
We are? Oh,
yes.
no.
But you're busier than ever.
I know. Well, when everything kind of closed down almost a year now, I had a whole slew of things I was going off to do. I just finished a solo festival where I had done my solo play that I'm most proud of, and I eventually would like to take it all over the world. And it did very well. And we were going to go off to Vermont to mount it there. And then I was going to go up to Free Fall Theater in St. Pete area to do Dear World, playing Who Do You Think? Mm-hmm. And then everything, and a series of other things, and everything just crashed. And that was the end of that. All classes. I will have a special class we'll talk about later in the program. Mm-hmm. And it was just devastating at first. It was like, what are we going to do? And of course, nobody knew how long this was going to go or how serious it was. And we certainly didn't have any leadership of any sort. So we just kind of were floundering around. But, and I've been doing cabaret shows. I thought, well, hey, why don't I just set up Sarah Solo TV, because Sarah Solo is my production company, or our production company that does celebrate solo work. And we can talk about that too. But, and I created this thing called Sarah Solo TV, hoping that we would just be able to have other solo artists throw up some of the work while we're doing COVID. And so I started one by one putting up my cabaret show called My Furniture Set, which was inspired by a furniture store, a high-end furniture store here in Sarasota, Florida. And I always, I know. Well, we go in there and work on solo theater pieces in the setting of a beautiful furniture store. We could use the furniture there, and people would come in and sit on the furniture around and experience. And I always threatened that one day I was going to do a cabaret show for them, and they laughed, and I did. So I went in and I explored, and I found like a beautiful dining room table that inspired me, and a sofa or a bed or a lamp or a picture or everything you could think of. And then I went back and I started thinking about my own, because when I do cabaret, I'm a storyteller. So I hate when cabaret performers say, this next song was written by. It just, I hate that. Mm-hmm. I know who it might be written by, and I don't really care. I want to know who you are, and I want to know how you feel about the song or express the song. Mm-hmm. So give me a good story that leads into it. And so I created these little monologues, that would set up a piece of furniture that would stimulate the furniture store, but they were connected to my own life, whether it was the dining room table, for instance. And it was a beautiful marble table with a green line all the way through it. And I looked at the price tag, and it was way too expensive. I could never afford it. But it made me think of my marriage. When I first got married, we finally, two of us had a place of our own, 2 floors of a brownstone. And we didn't have a stick of furniture except maybe this red futon sofa thing that we brought into it.
Isn't it amazing that everybody who starts out in New York has a red futon?
I know. Well, we just borrow it. We just keep passing it around.
Yes.
It's all the same one. Anyway, and we decided that we were going to buy something together for the first time. And what do you think we bought? The
table.
Nope.
No, it wasn't a table?
Nope. It was the complete works, the whole of volumes of Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica. And so those boxes became our chairs and our dining room table. I mean, we were nuts, but it was very romantic. And that led me into the John Pacino song, It Feels Like Home.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need a dining room table. Blah, blah, blah. And so that's kind of the gist of the thing. So I thought, well, why don't I just do it in my house? And I was all by myself. I had no one living with me. And so I would spend all day setting up lights and setting up. Finally, as the time went on, I'd get a better microphone as things would go on. But, and do my own cabaret act, but around my own furniture in my own house. I'm almost done. I've got a couple more songs to put up, and then I'll have my complete cabaret act on my website.
Now, I want to ask you, because when I was watching the documentary, which I watched again in preparation for this, The Best of Times, The Worst of Times, I loved, but Did I get it wrong?
The best worst thing that ever could have happened. But you're right, it was the
You're
best.
right, I did get it wrong. But no, but what I loved was the tour through your home.
Oh, isn't it funny?
No, but I love each color. I have a friend in Washington, D.C., and he has an apartment. He calls it the Rainbow House because every room is a specific color, and everything in that room is built around that color.
Oh,
and obviously, I can see from where you're sitting now,
kind of had a feeling, yeah.
color is important to you.
Absolutely.
But this house that you have is that? Are you still in the same home?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, in fact, the man that I had married, and then we were so in love with each other, we decided to get a divorce because I thought it was better to keep the friendship and get rid of the marriage. And we had a very romantic divorce ceremony. But we worked together. We created this company together, and of course we created a kid together named Huckleberry Walton, and we just he just moved here. You know, he had it was Blake Walton, and it's not any relation to Jim Walton, yeah. But he decided he just finished death walking his mother, and who lived to be 100 years old. And where else are we going to be? We had a little company here. He might as well come down here and share the house. So it's been wonderful to just have my good old friend here because it's been so lonely. So yeah, the two of us are in this place, and having the best time. Well, it's funny because of the documentary. I think everybody thinks that I gave birth to Huck Immaculate Conception because Huck was never mentioned.
But I mean, you talk about this TV station that you've created and all the work that you've done. Do you think that any of this that you've created would have been done if COVID had not come along?
Probably not for many years. Although our son has a production company in Los Angeles that wants to. It's a film. But it's online, and they want to specialize in filming theater. And so he's been luckily helping us do a virtual festival for the past 3 festivals that we had. And I think he's been encouraging both Blake and I to create classes online that deals with solo and call it the solo, for instance. And he wanted to help us with that. So we probably eventually would have gotten more into that. But then COVID happened and we were forced into it. And so there are times I kind of like it.
Well, I mean, one of the things
I like the way I look online than I do in person.
You look great. Everything looks great.
Public again.
You've obviously got the right lighting. I say that now, not that I didn't appreciate them before, but now more than ever, I appreciate the lighting guys, the sound guys, and gals, anyone who does what they do to make us all look better.
I'm becoming a nerd. I'm becoming a sound nerd because my son really specializes in sound also. He went out to California because he wanted to create movie musicals and then realized I don't have any cloud. But he also loves sound, and he does a lot of the sound engineering for their company. And we just geek out together. He said, "Mom, you got to get a good mic. Mom, let's do this." And then he'll explain something. And I said, when the COVID is over with, I'm coming out there and I want to apprentice with you because I'm just fascinated by the whole thing. So
it's part of your entire beginning. I mean, yeah. I was reading that your family had a summer theater. And you did everything. You worked on stage. You worked behind the scenes. All the work that you did. It
was the best acting training I ever had.
Are you originally from Wisconsin?
No, I'm not. I was born in Sioux City, Iowa. My father and mother were college professors. And my dad was teaching in a music conservatory at, I haven't had enough coffee. I'm talking very fast.
I'm right there with you.
Right. A music conservatory at Morningside College. And so I was born there. But he kept going to different colleges. And I end up really doing most of my growing up in Chicago area. And then, so I'm really from Chicago more than anything else.
And how did the theater come about? How did your parents?
Well, my folks were involved in the theater in colleges. My dad was a music professor. My father, when he taught, he was a combination of Danny Kaye and Victor Borge. He was hilarious and gifted. His main instrument was the piano, and funny because he was that combination. And my mother was a little tiny little thing. She was a Renaissance woman. She was a modern dancer. She was a choreographer. She was a director. She was a playwright. She was a poet. She was a visual artist. She studied at the Chicago Art Institute. So my house is mostly filled with a lot of my mom's artwork. And she, God, what didn't she do? And I thought that was normal. So they created musicals all throughout my childhood. You know, I would go home and we would have a wealth of musical albums, and I'd put them on and spend my afternoon just fantasizing. And I had all of West Side Story choreographed and costumed and blocked at the age of 7. You know, I was kind of disappointed when I finally saw it because it wasn't as good as I had. But you know, played all the parts.
Of course not.
Yeah, I could do West Side Story as a one-woman show. I wonder if Sondheim will let me do that someday.
Of course he will.
I'm sure he will.
If he's watching now, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Yeah, Steve, you're watching. I'm already ready. I've been ready since 7. But no, they were just delightful, and they really dragged me into musical theater, kicking and screaming, kicking like a chorus line dancer and screaming like Ethel Merman. But
well, speaking of Ethel Merman, was your mom a Mama Rose? No,
not at all. No. Oh, well, now let me take that back a little bit, because she did direct a lot, and I was always thrown into the shows that they had done. So I had to distinguish mom hat and director hat. I had gone out somewhere, and I had accidentally went through a window, and I had just cut up my arm. I had to get stitches in my arm. And I came into rehearsal. My mom said, "How dare you? You are an actress and you cannot get hurt." Wait, is this mom or is this the director talking? I want to know. I didn't get it clear. But no, they were so supportive. They loved everything.
Well, were you the kid that was standing on the sidelines going, "I really want to do this"? Or, I mean, based on what you're telling me, was your mom saying, "Come on, Ann, do this with us"?
Well, they just threw me in stuff, and I did. I think my first gig was 7. I was the balloon girl in Carnival. You know, and this is the bug bit a bit before, but no, I loved it. I was one of those precocious little girls. I knew everybody's lines and all the songs. And it paid off one day, because I was in high school, and I got a call that I had to leave school because at the college they were doing Canterbury Tales, I believe, and Mother Prioress had gotten sick, and I had to go on. I was 17, but I knew all the lines. I knew all the blocks.
I want to know a little bit more about the theater. Was it a professional theater company?
No. I mean, the up in Wisconsin.
Yes.
They started this called the Banner Players up in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Now, George Williams College, where they were teaching most of my middle school and high school time, they had this summer campus up in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And this beautiful, beautiful building that you could open up the slats and let the air come through. And it was right on the lake. Lake Geneva is just gorgeous. And that had been there since, I think, in the 1920s, maybe even earlier. She decided to have this little summertime theater. And a lot of the Goodman students had nothing to do in the summertime. They come up there and perform. So I'd be working with those kinds of students and college students and other people who'd audition for the company. So I became a company member, and the idea is where you would work for the campus in the daytime. I was called a tent maid. Meant I would go into the cabins and clean, and that was because before they had cabins, they were all tents, you know. So I was a tent maid, and then we would rehearse in the afternoon, and then we would do performances in the evening, and it was like a repertory all summer long, you know, good old summer stock. So it was the best training I ever had. You know, got to meet some very interesting people, and my folks they were a riot. They were a hoot. You'd love them. I wish you were alive. You would love them. They're fun.
Now, were you also exposed to the arts in school? Did you have a good program?
Yes. I don't think they had a lot of performance arts high schools when I was growing up, because I'm 64, 65. But we had an exceptional high school, had an incredible program. I mean, I was learning how to draft a set. You know, he really was good about us learning everything. So it was like being in a performance arts high school. And he was an incredible teacher. All the teachers were spectacular and really challenging. And I felt like I'd done a really good body of work, believe it or not. And then I was working in the community, at the college or what have you. I'm dyslexic, and I didn't know I was dyslexic till I was an adult. So I went through a tremendous amount of child abuse growing up, not by my parents, but through the school system. And because I was a college professor's daughter, I was a guinea pig for a lot of programs trying to understand this strange disability that I had, whether it's a left-right problem or what have you. And programs were very abusive. And my parents would feel horrible when they find out some of this stuff. But what do they know? Yeah, it was fine. So I brought this up for a reason.
We were talking about your parents and getting started in the theater and the work you were doing.
And so being dyslexic, I completely forgot what the reason was.
Well, let's talk about that for just a moment, if you don't mind. We're there. When did you first hear the word dyslexic, and what did that do for your mindset when you realized that there was?
Oh, I know what I was saying. I was just so terrified that I would be discovered, because reading was really hard for me. I was kind of dyslexic, didn't see things backwards. Not all of us do. Mm-hmm. We will see everything the same way. We just process it differently. It's like, you know Joyce Bulifant, right?
She's a very dear friend of mine, and I know all the work she does with that.
Yes. No, well, so I worked for the National Dyslexia Research Foundation in California. I got to know her really well. I mean, really well. I mean, we laugh. When we get together, we'd laugh so hard. And in fact, we both would just go up on names because we're dyslexic. So the guy with the blonde hair and the beard. Yeah, him. He was in that thing.
Well, it was amazing. She told me that when she did Match Game, when she would write down the words, she was so nervous that she was going to write it backwards or that she would be found out.
Right. Well, I'd be reading. I hate cold readings in theater. I just hated it because I could read it, and when they give you sides and they tell you to go out into the hallway for 10 minutes and look at it and come back in and do it. My 10 minutes is just going through and making sure that I will say all the words correctly, that I will see the word correctly, but it will come out a different word. I'll substitute a different word, or I'll drop words and add new words in there. And then the words on the page feel emotionally that they all come together like this. Not that I'm seeing that, but it feels like that. I have to calm down and breathe. And it feels like everything goes back into its right place again, and I can go forward. So that 10 minutes is just getting through that. So while I'm walking through the door to do my audition, I have to do something else to trick myself that I've done all that character work. Like I got to do Laban movements, the 8 efforts of movement, to just say, okay, ring, punch, dab. And then just go in and do it, because I knew the idea of the character that for myself that could get through something. I had no idea that I was like, I could hold my hand like this and you could see the droplets of water come off. It was just so terrifying. I was out in California and got to know Joyce around that time, and I was talking to a casting director, and I was telling her this, and she said, "Oh, honey, don't beat yourself up. Half the industry is dyslexic." Half the industry. You guys are the fastest memorizers, and you always do 120%. So always tell a director or somebody that you're dyslexic, and could you see the script ahead of time? And they don't care. They'll just do it. You don't have to think you're a horrible person. I was just sure during Merrily that I was going to get fired. They're going to find out there was something wrong. What's wrong with me? It was crazy. Now,
have you ever had an experience where you're auditioning for a playwright and you're just so nervous about their words coming out the right way?
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, Polly Penn, she had me come and audition for Goblin Market, which I got to do with the good old Terry Klausner, and that's a whole story in itself. But apparently, I don't remember this. She would tell everyone, not knowing I was dyslexic, that I was reading the script and I said something backwards or funny. And she would tell everybody, and they'd laugh about it. And finally, one day I said, "Well, you know, Polly, I'm dyslexic." And she went, "I am so sorry. I shouldn't be telling that story." I said, "No, but always references because I'm dyslexic." Yeah.
I want to get back to what was that deciding moment for you, Anne, when the light bulb went off, the bug bit you, and you said, "This is what I want to do with my life"?
Right. I think there was only one time in my life when I was 11 that I thought I might do another career, and that was going to be a brain surgeon.
Mm-hmm. And why a brain surgeon?
Wait for it.
Okay.
Well, again, at college, in George Williams College, their campus was down in Downers Grove, and the college doesn't exist anymore, so I won't get them in trouble. But I was at rehearsal. I think we were doing some show. Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. I was playing the boy. But I was wandering. I wasn't go on. So I was wandering down the hall in the evening, and I went into the science wing. And I opened a door, and there were a bunch of students cutting off the tops of heads of frogs to test their reflexes. And I thought, that's awful. So I leave there and I walk in and I open another door that was slightly open, and there's this long gray tray. And about 3 people at the top at the end of this tray. And I walked in and the professor knew who I was. Oh, hi, Annie Morrison. What are you doing here? And I said, oh, I'm at rehearsal. And I decided to wander in. And they were working on a cadaver. And these students were about ready to saw off the skull and take out the brain. So the teacher didn't want to make me scared or anything. She let me come over, and I was absolutely fascinated. They showed me how the hairs come through the skin, and I just thought I wasn't scared at all. The frogs was disgusting, but this was fascinating. And so we were watching them saw off the skull, and they were about ready to take out the brain pretty soon. And I said, wait a minute, I just need to find out if I'm on. And went running down the hall. I opened the door and I go, Mom, am I on? She said, no, we're probably going to get you for a while. I said, great. She said, why? Because we're about ready to take out the brain.
And how many people can say that?
I know. But they let me hold a human brain in my hands. And I thought, wow, I would be interested in, I've always been interested in the brain. Partly because I'm dyslexic. I'm fascinated how this all works. And I just figured, well, why not just continue being an actress and just mess with people's heads? It's the same kind of thing. But no, that was the only time. Otherwise, I just I'm kind of like my mom.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of became a Renaissance woman. I just got interested in everything. And nothing told me that I couldn't do it. So I discovered, I can write a song. Oh, I can write poetry. Oh, I can write a play. Oh, I can do that. Oh, I can paint this.
You can't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
As long as you don't know you can't do something, you can do anything. That's my philosophy.
So when speaking of not knowing that you can't do something, to move to New York, what year did you come to New York?
Well,
they go to New York.
Right. When I finally went off to college, I went to the Boston Conservatory of Music, and that was in 1974. And that was when schools were just starting out having musical theater programs. Mm-hmm. Up until then, you had your theater and your dance and what have you. And there was a real from the other departments about the musical theater thing happening. Mm-hmm. And I got there and it was okay. It just started out and I just didn't feel challenged. I had gotten involved with so many interesting things. I just didn't feel challenged. So I called up my dad and I said, Dad, I don't think I belong here. I don't think I really want to be challenged. And he said, well, why are you there? Are you going to college because your father's a college professor? Because that's a stupid reason. Mm-hmm. Now, he came from a generation where you only went to college to better yourself. Mm-hmm. So he didn't think that was a weird thing to say to his daughter. You just go off and you learn what you want to learn, blah, blah, blah. Nowadays, everybody's insisted you have to go to college. Maybe not so much now because the world's changing again. Mm-hmm. But in order to get a job, you had to go to college. And so I just figured out a different way. I ended up going to New York and spent some time at Herbert Berghoff Studios with Charles Nelson Riley and had a master class with Uta Hagen.
Myself,
Rita Gardner was my teachers. And I loved it because I was in a classroom with people that were doing it. So I really had to go there instead of being the big fish in a pond. I wanted to be stretched. And then I met this Korean family. I had gone back to Chicago to visit my folks, and they took me to this Chinese restaurant that had a band there that was a Korean family playing.
I love this.
And I fell in love with the second eldest son. And I went back to New York to go back to Herbert Berghoff Studios. And months later, I get this call from Kim Pa, actually from his father, because he spoke the best English. Said his father had to go in for a heart surgery, and they had to clean out some of his veins or whatever. And he could he was an incredible jazz sax player and trumpet player, and he couldn't play anymore because of that. And he was the MC, and they wondered if I would come and join them for a while and be the MC of their show. So for 2.5 years, I was known as Token Honky.
You wore. But you
wore a black afro wig because this stood out too much, and I left the school because I figured, it was not really a school, and it was the best 2 years of training too because I learned about the cabaret, mm-hmm. and I learned about how to break the fourth wall in a very.
Were you performing? You were performing mostly like in lounges and doing
Kankakee, Illinois. Let me tell you, and we started working up the jazz clubs and stuff. But it was like we'd start at ate and didn't finish till 4 o'clock in the morning, and you go to sleep, and Mrs. Kim would get the big pots in the hotel rooms and make kimchi and bulgogi and all this weird stuff, and I was crazy, except that they really thought that I should be a wife to Kim Pa, and they announced on stage one day that I was going to be his wife.
I was going to ask if that was true.
So I had to tell my parents, and my parents very beautifully explained that in America, it's the bride's family who arranged the marriage. I mean, sort of a way,
Yes.
And they got it, and they understood. They lost a little bit of face, and I didn't stay there much longer after that, because I would have been a Korean housewife, and I wouldn't have been able to do much theater except to only sing in the band with him, and that wasn't going to happen. So, it was just a weird time. So I left that, and I decided that I didn't want to go back to New York right away, that I wanted to get my union card. I wanted to continue education away, but get set up for a union card. And I found out that Burt Reynolds was going to start a new program down at Jupiter, Florida, called the Burt Reynolds Jupiter Theatre. And he wanted to have an institute of training. So I auditioned for it. I knew a professor down at a college in West Palm Beach. And you had to be a student in Florida in some way, and I really wasn't a college student. So he enrolled me in a couple of classes, and apparently at that time I passed. And I auditioned and got in, but they needed to wait a year. This was in 1978. They had to wait a year because they hadn't finished the building yet. So I went over to Sarasota, Florida, and auditioned for the Oslo Repertory Theater. They had a children's tour, and I spent a year on the road doing children's tour. So that's what I love about life, is that there's everything you do builds onto what you're going to do as you continue. If you're smart, you catch that's what it is. So there's nothing I've done that's really been a mistake or a waste of time ever. And I always tell my students who go into theater and they're afraid that maybe they won't going to do it, they want to go into something else. That's great. Theater is never a waste of time. It should be the mandatory class, not algebra. Algebra should be an elective because you're going to use your theater training and improv training in everything you do. So I got down there and I did this children's tour, and it was wonderful. I built another relationship with children and working in an intimate way that way, and which builds on what I'm going to do later. So I go to the Burt Reynolds Jupiter Theater, and you could have to do 52 weeks or be in 5 shows to get your equity card. And I actually ended up doing both. And the last week of we gotten our diplomas or whatever, and we got our equity cards, but he had Dinah Shore, his dear friend Dinah Shore, come in for a week and do her show there, and each one of us got showcased during the week. And so I came on and I Can Cook Too, and it was a fun thing. I think it's probably someone's probably got it. Everything's somewhere. It's probably online somewhere. I bet we can find it. And I did it, and he said to Dinah Shore that this young woman here, of anyone I know, is going to be on Broadway within a year. He was off by 6 months. So I left there and I went to New York, and the first thing I auditioned for was a little off-Broadway show, which was called Dreamtime, and it was actually swing reinvented because it didn't do very well out of town. So they reinvented it with just 3 characters, and got to work for the first time with Alfred Uhry, lovely man. And I almost left the theater because of that, because I won't name the person who directed it, but he was also doing Est at the time. So it was all that self-helpy SD kind of crap, and it was just sounded like bullshit to me. We're trying to do a show.
I'll tell you how to get out of Est. They called me up, and a friend of mine went through it, and I kept getting the phone calls.
Yeah.
And their belief was, if you want it enough, all you have to do is ask for it. So when they called me, I said, I really want to do this, and I want you to pay for it.
Did they pay for it?
No, they never called me again.
Well, I did something similar called Life Spring. In S, you learn that you're an asshole. In Life Spring, you learn you're a nerd. Much better. But no. So I went off to New York and I did this little show. And then next thing I knew, I was auditioning for a show called Keystone. That was going to be in GeVa Theatre. And that's where I got to meet people like Jason Gra, my great Jason Gra. We get together and we laugh so hard we can't do anything because we can't breathe.
He has no sense of humor.
No sense of humor. I just have to just sit there and go, but no, he's hilarious. And of course, we were working with, who was I working with? Oh, all kinds of wonderful people. But that was the show. I think I wanted to be submitted for Merrily We Roll Along, but they needed people to be under 20. And I had just about getting ready to turn 25. So, but someone came to see the show and talked to the agent. I didn't have an agent really at the time. Agent stuff, and I said, I think she needs to come down and audition for Joanna Merlin. And so I took a little trip down there, and I thought, okay, it's going to be a waste of time because I'm too old. And she said, I want Hal Prince to see you. Can you come back? And it was almost done with the run. I had one more weekend to go, and I just, innocently said, I don't think I can. I'm almost done with the show. Can I do it the following week, the weekend? And the agents were furious with me. This is Hal Prince. How dare you say such a thing? And Joanna said, oh, yeah, sure. We'll just wait till next weekend. So I came in, and those days you got to audition on the stages of Broadway shows. And Evita was obviously available because it was his. And now, if I don't know, but Evita's rake was really, really high. It wasn't standard yet. And so I went out there, and dancers were getting injured all the time. I went out there in heels, and I was not so scared that I was singing for Hal Prince, but I was terrified I was going to fall into the pit. So it was like the best audition. He was so wonderful and so relaxed. I had a monologue that George Firth had written just for. I wish it was put in the show because it was a wonderful little monologue, but he wrote it just for the auditions. And Hal comes tearing down the back because he was towards the back of the theater and goes, Ruthie, that's what I'm talking about. And can you come back in 2 weeks? Because Steve's in Mallorca. And I went, sure. So 2 weeks later was my birthday. And this is in April, and I'm walking out on stage, this time in flats. And I sing, and Steve is the only person in the audience. And he was delightful. I had heard that he didn't like young people. And I had to lie about my age. Joanna said, whatever you do, don't tell him how old you are. Say that you just turned 20. I went, okay. So New York thinks I'm about 5 years younger than I really am. And I don't care. I always tell the truth. But so he was out there. He was just a delightful audience. That's the best time. And he made me feel so good. And he said, how high do you sing, Annie? And I just did I Can Cook Too again. And then I had a high C, so I did it again. He laughed. He said, it's great. He said, that's good because I still have one more song to write for Mary Flynn. I went, oh, okay, that's nice. And he said, well, I'll see you first day of rehearsal. And he got up and left.
Happy birthday.
So that's exactly it. I went out in the street and it dawned on me. I got a Broadway show for my birthday. And then I'm walking down the street and it occurred to me that Stephen Sondheim's going to write me a song, which ended up being, now you know, life is grimy. Well, now you know. So yeah, it's very, very, very goofy. And then Merrily obviously didn't do very well. But that's a whole evening of conversation right there. We'll get into that.
Go and watch the documentary, the one that I mispronounced at the beginning.
The best, worst, something. The best times, the worst of times, and it was a song.
Kudos to Lonnie, because it is a brilliant documentary.
Here's an interesting thing. He originally had another idea with it, and he was going to talk to all the cast members and other people, and follow all of us where we had gone. And then he discovered that box that we thought was lost from ABC documentary that they're supposed to be following us around a whole time. And I don't know where the rest of those tapes are, because the later ones I knew I was on because they were following us at picnics and following us whenever we did shows. Because when I was finally cast, we weren't going to go to rehearsal until September. And so the first day of rehearsal, we all really were true friends. But when he found that box, it changed his whole focus on it. He wanted to focus more on the tin that was there and opening that up. And so that went bye Annie, because I wasn't in all of that. I wasn't until much later. And I was a little sad. A lot of us were a little sad because of that, a lot of good footage had to go under the floor. I hope he can pull that footage up someday and do a follow-up, because we never got to talk about Ron Field. I did a whole hour on Ron Field and Larry Fuller coming in, who were the choreographers. All kinds of things that ended up on the floor. And a lot of people's interviews had to go. So, we didn't get to hear from Liz Calloway or Giancarlo Esposito or Mona Allen, who grew up on Broadway. You know, her parents were in the theater and has a wealth of things to talk about. So hopefully maybe he'll do a little documentary and put all those pieces back in there.
Well, I mean, all of us have been in shows throughout our careers where you bond with the family and then your lives take you in opposite directions. But there is a bond with all of you.
Bond like no other.
I understand that you still do Zoom meetings and you still get together and everything. What is it about that particular show?
Oh, I'll tell you exactly. First of all, we all went into rehearsal as friends. We all knew each other. We spent so much time with each other. It was like we were in a Merrily boot camp, you know. And Ron was giving dance classes in the summertime, you know, to keep us in shape and ready to go. Because none of us were dancers. I mean, I'm a person who moves well. I can fake it, but I wouldn't call myself a dancer. Of course, when I say that, and Blake hears me, he always says, "Oh, Annie, you got to be the dance captain in Love Musique on Broadway. So what are you talking about?" That's because I just paid attention. That's all it was. Just paid attention and anticipated what she was going to do next, you know, but I'm not really a dancer. So, but yeah, it was, so that was going on. We all knew we were in trouble and we all wanted desperately to make it work because Uncle Hal and Uncle Steve, I don't know if I can call Steve an uncle, but Hal was actually Uncle Hal. That's how much we loved him. And Steve was just so, Steve will tell you it was the best time he ever had rehearsing. He had so much fun, so much creativity. But when we got into previews and we knew we were in trouble, and we were supposed to have a 2-week preview period and then open. And that 2-week became 8 weeks and a 2-week run. And so we gave up all our days off. We were in a war zone together, and we had each other's back, and we went through some harrowing stuff that young people normally don't get a chance to see or experience. But we did it, and we left. Some people never went back to show business after that. It crushed them. It didn't hurt my career, but some people were, you know, but we kept in contact with each other, and some people would fall away for a while. Sally Klein didn't want anything to do with us for the longest time. And whenever something would come up, she's like, "I can't do it, guys. I just can't do it." And this last reunion that we had, we were singing Our Time together with all the different Merrilies for something during COVID. She got to be a part of it, and it was like she was never gone. And we all opened our arms and held Sally virtually. And she writes, and she's an incredible writer, and she writes beautiful stuff to all of us. It's just, Giancarlo, we hardly ever get to see because this is a big old star, and Jason comes in all the time because Jason's like my brother, you know? So yeah, so by the time we got to do the reunion concert in 2002, which is stunning. I don't know if it's online yet, if everybody can see the whole thing. That's the thing that everybody should see. You said some pieces of it in the documentary. It's stunning. And there's no script. George Firth got to be a little pouty boy, and he kept fixing it with Steve, and Hal didn't really want anything more to do with Merrily because Hal, once the show is up, he's already planning on the next show. So that was there, and now he moves forward. And he wasn't even sure he was going to even come to the reunion, but he did. I'm so glad he did. So he said, George Firth said, nope, if they're not going to do the original script, then they can't do any of it. And I think that's when Steve and George, because Steve said, people are coming to see the original cast. They want to see the original show. Don't be so stupid. And it's a shame because I would have loved to see the original script put up on its feet again, you know, even as a concert version.
Absolutely.
But the beautiful thing is we just did the music, except for any lines that happened to be on the album, you know. And you really got to see the problem of the show. It's always been the book.
Well, I want to ask you, and I do want to talk about the work you're doing now before we run out of time, but I do want to ask you, and, you know, again, we've seen the documentary and we know the history of this show, but what was the one life lesson above all others?
One? There's so many life lessons.
I know there are so many, but is there one in particular that resonates so deep within the core of
and I probably said in the documentary, I don't remember, that we got to see our musical theater gods fail, and it was okay. That it's okay to fail, because you come back stronger, and you use that failure to be a stepping stone to something else. So in a sense, you never really fail in a way. You're just brought down a few pegs. And you pick yourself back up again, and it makes you more creative and stronger and more resilient. Or it destroys you if you allow that to happen. But for me, it was, oh my God, I can fail and it's okay. It's just going to make me stronger.
And I want to ask you how you got so interested in solo work.
Oh, well.
Yes.
I should tell you right there, when I spent so much time on the road with a Korean family singing in nightclubs, because I broke the fourth wall and I really understood being in front of an audience, and they were your scene partner, and I've always loved solo theater. And it's scary as hell. It's terrifying. You have to be incredibly brave to do it because you are so vulnerable. And I just love, my dad was an incredible storyteller. My mom is too, still is. And I love storytelling. So to be able to tell your story, something intimate in a creative way, so you're not just doing a TED Talk. I think I very rarely do stories that are just completely me. I'm in the story somehow, or the focus is not on me. It's really about something else. And I love it. And it's terrifying. And as a dyslexic, my first real long solo play just by myself that wasn't like a cabaret version, because I love cabaret and I do solo cabaret all the time and I build it. But like I said, I'm a storyteller. So my patter is, it has a beginning and middle end. Doug Abel from the Vineyard says, Annie, this isn't really a cabaret show. This is a theater piece. And I said, excuse me, a really good cabaret show should be a theater piece. And so I love that. But to stand on the stage and do tremendous amount of verbiage is quite empowering. And you have to decide who your audience is. And when you get that connection, and then you learn to breathe with them, and it's just the most amazing experience. I still get on just before I go on stage and go, what am I doing? Why am I out of my mind? I'm insane. And then you get out there and go, oh yeah, that's right. This is a dialogue between me and an audience. So I think I became a better actor with other people on stage because there was this other connection. And I don't know if you get this, and you probably will know this very well because you're a performer. There was a time when something magical happened with you in the audience in a play. You could feel this energetic, I don't want to say spirit, maybe spiritual, but this energetic thing would arc up like this, and the audience was in it, and they'd arc up, and you touch like way up in the hemisphere, and you could feel it. It was so amazing. And then we saw people getting more and more into television and film, and you started seeing the audience more like this. And so you, as a performer, and that was for solo theater that it gets arc again, because they are intimately with you. They're aware that all of a sudden it's just you and them, and it's lovely. I think it's the interesting thing about COVID. This whole experience of having like this, I'm beginning to feel this connection again. Blake and I created this company called Sarah Solo, which is to help develop and celebrate the solo artists. And we're really interested in your work. We call you're a solo artist, not a solo performer. We love your art. We like to support it. And so even if you just do it only with a chair and nothing else, that's good theater to me, because I'm interested in your storytelling and how you make it theatrical. And we love that development. We started Sarah Solo because we got involved with the United Solo Festival in New York, performing there. We got awards and we became members of their academy, basically meaning we could vote for people and suggest people for the festival.
And are you expecting submissions for your festivals?
We're probably starting to do that. I mean, we basically invite people. Okay. A lot of festivals, the artist has to, they usually have to pay a participation fee I mean, United Solo, you're like paying $900 just to participate. I mean, really. And then if you have to get yourself there, and then you have to busk your show, you have to get an audience, and it becomes very expensive. If you're in New York and you're an equity actor, then you have to get a showcase code. I mean, what? So we wanted to start a retreat down here, so solo artists could come with other like-minded solo. It's not competitive sport. We really root for each other, because it's you uniquely doing your thing, and it's what becomes a celebration. So we decided we're going to invite people to come down. So if we're inviting you, we don't charge a participation fee. You have to get yourself here, but then we ask our people in our area to house the artist for that festival, and we find volunteers who will drive you places and get you to the airport. You just have to get yourself there.
Mm-hmm.
And you're coming to Sarasota, Florida, so you're not going to get here early enough usually to busk your show. So I'll ask people to be their advocate and go out there and get to know the artist as much as you can and try and drive an audience to them. So that's kind of what we're about. I think we'll eventually start to submit. We discovered, though, we had one festival a year in the wintertime with 16 performances, one performance only. And we decided to break that up throughout the year and celebrate only 4 artists and give them 3 shows so they could be really celebrated with the other, like they would share an evening with someone. So it was really celebration. We're noticing people, well, only come see this artist and they won't see somebody else. You're at a festival, at least have something else so you have something to compare,
Yeah.
Festivals are cheap. They're not expensive. And it's an interesting, entertaining evening. So, and sometimes you have some clunkers. What can you say? But anyway, so we decided to spread this out, and we thought, okay, great. We had our Winter Fest in February, and then COVID happened. We couldn't have our May. We figured out, what are we going to do? Our November 1 celebrated solo artists that were in our community, closer to our community. And we spent the money to film them in one place so that for our first festival virtual, everybody was in the same universe. And it was beautiful.
That's great.
And our son, who has a wonderful company called Accidental Jacket Entertainment, wants to do a lot of streaming, and they streamed it for us. And his lovely wife, Laura Hartley, who's a marvelous entertainer herself and comedian and improv actress too, is also an incredible editor. So she edited the pieces. And so Huck became the moderator afterwards, because we had they were filmed, but all around it we had this lovely live, like we're doing right now, so people could write in the chat line and have a conversation with them. And now we felt like over the internet or whatever, we felt that arc happened, and people were saying, solo theater really works this way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking it's just expanded our universe. We just finished last week our Winterfest, and now thinking our Mayfest is going to be about development. We've got some people I'm almost in the process of, or we got a woman who's going to chronicle her creating a cabaret act from the beginning to wherever she is.
Wow.
Nobody knows how that, it's a whole animal putting that together.
Absolutely.
And so that whole festival is going to be in celebration of the development of something. And maybe at the end, one of the shows will be someone who's just finally got it done, and we'll celebrate that. So we're just like, I can't wait. I'm so excited.
And will you come back when all of that is happening?
Yeah.
Now,
there are like 5,000 things we haven't even discussed.
No, we're going to run out of time. But before we run out of time, when I first started performing as a cabaret artist, and I was performing in Provincetown, I had a musical director.
I think you had someone play for you by the name of John Shirley.
Yes, it's funny that you mentioned his name because he's right here.
Hi! He's my accompanist for my furniture set.
I know. John and I have not seen each other in at least 25 years. And yesterday I posted about you being here tonight, and he said, we work together. And I said, would you like to come on and say a few words?
I'm loving this. And let me say, she is more beautiful in person. She is gorgeous. And
I know.
So, obviously so fun to be around. Oh my God, it's great.
We have so much fun together. And John, I'm sure you know this, is a wonderful writer.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I want him to write. I want us to write a complete own cabaret that's all original material. That's what I want to do.
Yes.
Now. Yeah. Because in my furniture set, there were some things we just didn't feel we had the right material for. So we thought, well, let's spread it. I wanted to do a coffee table song, which we often call a cocktail table. And so my storytelling was about that whole thing. And then I just wrote the song, I get like a Lucille Ball sketch, gets drunker and drunker and drunker. And John took it and he realized the cocktail table sound underneath it. And then I said, we need a sofa song. And he wrote this wonderful number. So far, so good.
You know, when you talk about the coffee table, I'm reminded of that episode of Seinfeld where he wants to, Kramer comes in and he wants to create a book about coffee tables. Because
of course.
It's a coffee table book.
Yeah. Well, John thought it would be fun if we came up with the Great American Furniture Songbook.
Yes.
So how did you two start working together?
I was looking for another accompanist because I was losing my accompanist, and I was up in St. Pete, and somebody suggested you should meet John Shirley. And I came over to your house, right, one of your homes.
Yes, yeah,
and started playing through some material. And I said, well, I think this will be a lot of fun. I think our personalities mesh well, and I like to work with an accompanist. I like them to be the musical director. I like when they can say, hey, it'd be fun. What if we take this out of time and put it in 5/4 in this little section here, or I got this great idea. What if I put dee 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 someplace else in it? It's like, it's been such a glorious thing. You're gonna have to go and watch our Sarasota TV and see his work.
I can't wait. I can't believe. First of all, Anne, I love you so much.
I love you too. Can we be friends forever?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And John, and I've got something in the back of my mind that I've been talking to one of the cast members of Merrily We Roll Along about.
Okay.
So hopefully something magical will happen there. But John, Anne brought us back. I have not seen John's face in 25 years.
Look at that face. Just look at that. Look at that funny old face of yours.
And John could tell you stories, but I hope he doesn't.
When we get off this call, you bet we are.
Yes. As my friend Leroy Ream says, Richard, he says, some night we're going to do a show called the 11 o'clock hour. Everybody has to sign a waiver, and no one can disclose anything that is discussed on that stage.
Oh, can I be there?
Yes.
Be there.
Well, I love you so much.
I love you too. Have me back.
I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope you had a great time.
Yes.
If you did, please, whatever platform you're watching this on, whether it be YouTube or the podcast, or even go to my website, richardskipper.com, sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show. That helps to boost me in other markets. And I want to let everybody know that tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, I'm interviewing Susan Horowitz. She calls herself Dr. Sue. She's written a book about queens of comedy. Lucille Ball, Phyllis Diller, Joan Rivers.
Yeah.
I mean, and she's a very funny person herself. I always end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list. Go to the 7th name that pops up.
7th now, okay.
Yes. Reach out to that person and let that person know what they mean to you. I changed the numbers.
I love that. I've already done 6.
And what happened?
It was a lovely conversation. Yeah.
That's great. And as our dear friend David Freeman says, we're all in this together.
Right.
But we're just not in the same boat. And before we sign off tonight, I'm going to give you the final word. Sorry, John. We'll do another evening just you and me together. Will you promise me that?
Sure.
We got lots of stories to tell.
So, I'd love to do that. Let me know.
And I want to give you the final word. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about tonight that you want to build upon, anything that you want to mention that we didn't talk about that you wish we had.
Well, that's a whole other show.
Or just any message that you want to put out to everybody at this point.
I just want to know if you got a solo play in you, write it and then let me know about it because it will help you develop it. It's my favorite thing to do now.
And how can people get in touch with you? Through your website?
Sure. I think it's a great idea. Yeah. Go to my website, which is AnneMorrison.net. Piece of cake.
Thank you so much.
Please don't put an E at the end of Anne. It's just A-N-N.
Yes. And you don't need an E because A-N-N is enough.
It's enough.
You're the best. Yeah. I love you so much.
I love you too, my dear.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.